So when we're not so much in the mind, and in the emotions, in the body, what takes place is we're more in the being, more in ourself. And as a result of that, what happens is a finer perception is there. Because what happens is the perception, or the objects of perception, are within the awareness that is clear and pure. And so it's when the thoughts are less, the emotions are less, when the perception of the objects are less, then the experience of being is much more dominant. And the experience of being is just our own awareness. It's awareness itself. So that awareness is silent. It's quiet. It's really vast and grand, because we can't find an end to it. The being itself is everywhere. It's unbounded. It's all over. And all of our experiences of our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions are all happening in that pure, silent awareness itself. And in that presence, in that stillness, in that peace, in that silence, quite instantly, almost, the thoughts are less, perception is enhanced, awareness is enhanced, and it's not really that the thoughts need to be less, or the noise needs to be less. It's that can all continue the same. It's just that the being itself is what becomes more awake to itself, by itself, when it begins to become more awake to itself, when it feels itself, when it knows itself all by itself. And this is what takes place here. This is what we do, is awareness itself becomes more awake to itself through this speaking and listening that happens. We don't mind the content of the happening. We don't mind the content of the words or the surroundings, or we don't mind content. It can stay. Doesn't matter. But what increases is you could say, the container of consciousness itself becomes more awake, more awake. And this wakeful alertness that naturally happens right here. Simply because the being itself is connecting with itself. It's deepening its own experience of itself. We don't have to do anything, really. We just stay out of the way and allow the silence and stillness to just be. Just be. Because, after all, it's our own being itself that creates silence and stillness, peace, presence. It's just being itself. Being itself. So it doesn't really matter what's happening in the mind, in the body, in the perceptions, in the surroundings. It's what is happening to the container of all of that. To what all of that is happening in. So the awareness itself becomes more awake to itself. Concentration, or you could say concentrated, effortless focus on just stillness, just silence, or that wakeful alertness in which all of this is contained. All of this is happening in that wakeful alertness, which is a field. It's a field. It's an unbounded field. It's a field of consciousness. It is the field of consciousness in which all thoughts, all feelings, all perceptions of and everyone, everywhere, and everything, everywhere in the world and universe are happening. It's the same one field of consciousness. There is only one consciousness. And so this field of consciousness itself becomes more awake to itself through us. And so we have we have a purpose in life after all. You know? It's really just to be a conduit for consciousness itself, to experience itself, to deepen its own experience of its own vast silence and stillness that is all around. It's encompassing us right here now. We just notice, very innocently notice the presence, to say the presence in the space all around. And this presence that is engulfing us and encompassing all of the objects and phenomena in front of us. This presence is we're causing that. You could say it's able to experience more of itself through this process. that is taking place now. And so the presence can use our body minds as a conduit to experience itself. This is what's been happening all along. This is what we are for. It's not about you and me. It's not about our little lives. No, we think we have a little life because, well, we're made in the image of infinite divine consciousness, infinite intelligence. And that intelligence, because it's infinite, it is everywhere at every point. And it's concentrated at the point of human experience. This is a concentrated point of that infinite intelligence. And yet we've been so lost and so caught, so identified with the little body, mind, and life experience that we've missed our purpose. We've missed what we're for, what we are as a mechanism, a conduit for consciousness itself, to experience itself and deepen its own experience of itself, to discover or uncover more of the infinite divine reality of itself through us, through this world, and all of this. So it's all about consciousness itself. It's what we are. It's what you are. And so the more that unbounded awareness, that wakeful light of consciousness itself, in which all of this is contained, the more it sees itself and remembers itself as being that, you could say, that force of evolution that constructs, that creates and appears as all of the forms and phenomena in front of us. The deeper consciousness experiences itself, the more it reveals more and more of its divine reality, that all of this is this is what it is, really. It's an image of it. It is the true material out of which all of this is made. Is the, you can see, the power behind, the supreme power behind consciousness itself. And that is right here in the space all around us. Because what is taking place as we sit and listen to this is that consciousness is able to experience itself more deeply through our body minds. And in doing so, it cultivates and cultures our own body-mind a little more, so that consciousness itself can experience more of itself through our own body-minds at all times. Not just a flash in the pan, but so that it's there all the time, that unbounded awareness itself that is really, let's say, pulsating. It's pulsating in the remembrance of its own self. And this is why we can sense a presence in the space around us now. Because what that presence is, it is consciousness itself, conscious of itself. See? So, it's ever in the process of knowing itself, of falling back to itself, of really surrendering to itself, to know itself. And this causes this presence that we feel in the space around us. Something grand, something more grand than the mind or body could even really fathom. It can't fathom it. It just has to stay out of the way so that the consciousness itself can experience itself more fully and continue to be awake to this subtle motion of silence and stillness, a subtle motion, a flow of consciousness, conscious of itself. This is consciousness itself becoming more awake to its own power, we could say, its own motors, its own generator of knowing and being. So when we sit here being innocent, just innocent and still, and just allowing everything to be as it is, allowing whatever happens just to happen. What takes place is we get sucked in to this vortex of consciousness, conscious of itself. It's pulling itself into itself more deeply and pulling itself awake to itself everywhere within itself. And so feel as though being pulled by a tractor beam of consciousness itself, pulling itself more deeply awake into more of the infinite reality of itself. And so that takes place, that's happening all the time. And because we're moving out of the way somewhat, we can allow it to happen all by itself more deeply. So we just step aside, allow that consciousness itself to be. It's just your own self. It's your own being itself that becomes more awake to itself. And so if there's any, thoughts or emotions or sensations going on, they can happen. But what is happening is more profound, it's more dominant. Because awareness itself is grabbing hold of itself more intensely through us, and it's pulling itself more awake and more into itself, more into its own infinity. And so it's becoming more still, more silent, more vast, more grand, more awake, and simultaneously it becomes more alive, more alert, more alertness, more energetic, more liveliness, more aliveness is felt in this presence around us, because this is what presence is. Presence is lively silence. And that lively silence is just consciousness itself, conscious of itself, everywhere within itself, pulling itself more awake, more deeply into its motionless ocean of infinity. And that pulling that is taking place is an activity, the dynamism of silence. And that is what we feel, to whatever degree, in this presence around us here now. So when that gains its own momentum on its own, without much interference from the mind, the body, the little person, or the objects of perception, then a deepening takes place, and that field of consciousness itself finds out more about this flow of the knowing of itself that is pulling itself more deeply within itself every split second, every moment, beyond time, really beyond all time and space. It's opening up to a clear experience of its own infinite reality, just by itself, all by itself. So we don't have the words, but focuses, it concentrates upon itself. It feels, there are no words. It feels itself, it knows itself. It's surrendering deeply to itself, and causing itself to become more known to itself, more awake to itself, and move more deeply within its own experience of itself. To begin to reveal to itself more of its own internal dynamics, the internal dynamics of knowing itself that causes this sense of presence that we may feel in the space all around us here. The internal dynamics that are taking place in the motion of consciousness, really falling back within itself to know itself, bringing itself more awake and more deeply in the pure knowing of itself, in revealing more of the clarity and purity of its own wholeness, so that this space around us, space that is us, really, becomes so dominant that we don't care about anything else. We don't mind whatever is happening. It just continues to know itself and use us here as that vehicle for its own self-knowing, so that more of these finer details, finer impulses of its own supreme exquisiteness can be felt and known by itself everywhere in the whole space all around us here while we're listening to this, so that a grand energetic wholeness engulfs it's all there is. It's all there is that grand energetic wholeness of consciousness itself, knowing itself, drawing itself more deeply into itself, falling back upon itself, opening itself up more and more, and permeating everything, everywhere. Because that knowing of itself, that drawing back to its own experience of itself, and rising again to recognize its own infinite reality, is the dynamic within itself that creates all these frequencies of intelligence that create the appearance of all of these objects and phenomena everywhere in the space around us to infinity. And at a point within itself, it appears as you, as a body-mind, in an apparent individual body-mind, which in truth is cosmic, universal, infinite, unbounded, as that infinite consciousness itself, that infinity of consciousness. So it becomes more awake, more present, and reveals in that presence more of the internal stuff of its own nature. The fabric of consciousness itself begins to get revealed to itself in this stillness, in this presence around us, because in this wholeness that is here now, a flavor of a grand flavor of, we could say, a thickening of really all qualities, a thickening of allness itself, of wholeness, of fullness itself. So the whole space around us is filled with a beautiful space, a beautiful wholeness. Very beautiful, very grand, very exquisite. And the consciousness itself, the field of consciousness itself, is delighted. It's delighted that it can reveal more of its true nature of itself right here and now through all of this right here, all of these bodies. And so the consciousness and all of the qualities of intelligence that create the appearance of the body-mind and all of the objects, phenomena around us, they all become happier. They're always happy anyway, because it's a joy when consciousness itself becomes awake to itself, awake to more of the flow of the knowing of itself and revealing more of its own fullness, so that it's not an abstract thing. We don't have to make a mood about it, because it comes up here in front of us so much more dominant than we could ever create, that the mind could ever create when creating a mood. Because we have behind it, underlying and permeating and pervading everything, everywhere, we have this power behind consciousness itself that really is causing consciousness itself to be conscious of itself, that is forever in the process of pulling itself more awake to itself. And so this indescribable, non-moving, moving flow of consciousness knowing itself and revealing, just opening up more of itself to itself. It doesn't matter, it doesn't care about here or there, what part of the world or universe. It is that timeless infinity the timeless present moment of now. And that timeless now is flowing and deepening its own experience of itself through and creating the appearance of time and space, and these apparent passing moments, which is really timelessness itself, just experiencing itself and deepening its own eternal reality of itself. Because there is only this timeless moment which is ever in the process of being awake to itself, creating the appearance of time and space. And so there's a whole beautiful world in here that we've been missing. A whole realm of intelligence, infinite intelligence, within that unbounded flow of consciousness itself, knowing itself, falling back to itself, experiencing more and more of itself. So all of cosmic life is here now. It's right here now. All of the intelligence that is governing all of the planets and galaxies and universes and all of life is right here now. And it's there due to consciousness itself, knowing itself, and we are the vehicles of that process. We are the effect, the appearance, but also the vehicles whereby the consciousness itself can use to experience more of this beautiful wholeness of itself, and really come awake more to the true divine texture of consciousness itself, that even as awareness itself it wasn't awake to. So it gets an opportunity now to fill itself full of fullness, and gives an opportunity for that fullness to investigate, to look, to open to all these finer flows of divine intelligence, divine power that creates its own wholeness and fullness. So the whole space around us is just filled with consciousness, filled with joy, filled with fullness, filled with love, filled with fullness. And this is what we do, is to become these channels for consciousness to experience itself. We don't have to channel any particular entity. Why channel specific entities when you are in truth the channel for that which is beyond all entities to experience itself through. That is far greater than the mind could ever possibly imagine. And far more beautiful for the living a life of fullness, of wholeness. And what we see, through the eyes and all we hear through the ears, through the senses, all that, it gets enhanced due to the knowing of consciousness of itself and the opening up more deeply to itself. Because what takes place is that wholeness of consciousness itself. It cannot be contained in a little tiny individual body. And so that little body has to expand and expand and expand and become bigger and bigger, to enable the consciousness itself to know the finest values of itself, finest fabric of itself, right at the point of individual appearance. It finds its own infinity, and that infinity finds its own divinity. It has been there all along. It has been here all along. So we just allow that whole field of consciousness itself to remember itself, just fully remember itself, not be caught and not limited or restricted by individual appearance or individual ego. Open up, completely open, and allow. Become awake to the constant surrender that is taking place within consciousness at all times as it opens up to its true pure divinity.